My sister spent months trying to seduce my husband. He didn't expect him to beg me to stay right in front of her. My sister Noelle has been competing with me since we were children, and I don't mean the normal kind of sibling rivalry. I mean the kind where if I got a new pair of shoes, she cried until my parents bought her the same pair in a better color. If I made a friend, she'd find a way to become that person's closer friend within a week. If I got a good grade on a test, she'd tell our parents she got a better one even if she didn't. Everything I had, Noelle wanted. Not because she actually wanted it, but because I had it, and that was enough. When we were teenagers, I started dating a boy named Corey, and within 3 days, Noelle was texting him and telling him I talked about him behind his back. Corey believed her and broke up with me, and Noelle lost interest in him by the end of the week. She didn't want him. She wanted to prove she could take him. That's who Noelle is. When I met my husband Wendell, I knew I had to be careful. I didn't introduce them for almost 4 months. I wanted what we had to be solid before Noelle could get anywhere near it. Wendell and I met at a bookstore. He was reading in the corner and I asked him what the book was about, and he talked for 20 minutes without stopping, and I fell for him somewhere around minute 7. He was kind and thoughtful and a little awkward, and he looked at me like I was the only interesting thing in any room we walked into. We got engaged after a year and a half, and that's when I finally brought him to a family dinner. Noelle walked in late wearing a dress that was too much for a Tuesday night at our parents' house. She sat across from Wendell and spent the entire dinner asking him questions about himself and leaning in when he answered and laughing at things that weren't funny. Wendell was polite because that's how he is. After dinner, Noelle pulled me aside and said he's cute but kind of plain, and that she was surprised I picked someone so quiet. That was her way of telling me she didn't see him as a threat to her. I knew that meant she wasn't going to try anything, at least not yet. After the wedding, Noelle was fine for about a year. She'd come over for dinners and be normal. She'd talk to Wendell about books and movies, and they got along fine, and I started to think maybe she had grown up. Maybe getting older had changed her. Then Noelle got dumped. Her boyfriend of 2 years left her for someone else, and she took it hard. She showed up at our house crying, and I held her on the couch and told her she deserved better, and made her tea and let her sleep in our guest room. She stayed for 3 days. During those 3 days, something shifted. She started paying more attention to Wendell. She'd come downstairs in the morning in a tank top and shorts and sit at the kitchen table while he made coffee. She'd ask him to hand her things just so he'd have to come close. She'd compliment him constantly. She told him he smelled good. She told him his arms looked strong. She told him he was the kind of man women wish they could find. Wendell would say thank you and walk away because he didn't know what else to do. I noticed all of it. I didn't say anything because I wanted to see how far she would go. Noelle went home after those 3 days, but she didn't stop. She started coming over more often, always when she knew Wendell would be home. She'd show up with food she made and say it was for both of us, but she'd hand it to Wendell and say, I made this for you specifically. She'd sit next to him on the couch close enough that their legs touched, and if I sat between them, she'd move to the other side so she could face him directly. She started texting him. I know because Wendell showed me every single one. He'd hand me his phone without me asking and say, your sister texted me again. The messages were never anything that crossed a clear line on their own, but together they painted a picture. She'd say things like thinking about you today, or you're such a good listener, or I wish I could find someone like you. Wendell would respond with short, polite answers and then show me. He never hid a single message. One night, Noelle came over for dinner and she wore a dress that was tighter than anything she'd normally wear on a weeknight. She kept touching Wendell's hand when he passed her things at the table. After dinner, I went to the kitchen to clean up and left them in the dining room on purpose. I stood around the corner and listened. Noelle told Wendell she had something to tell him. She said she had feelings for him. She said she knew it was wrong, but she couldn't help it, and that she thought about him all the time, and that she believed he felt the same way but was too loyal to say it. Wendell was quiet for a second, and then said, Noelle, I love your sister. She said she knew that, but that love wasn't always enough, and that sometimes people end up with the wrong person. Wendell said, I didn't end up with the wrong person. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Noelle said, what if I could make you happier? Wendell said you couldn't. I walked back into the dining room. Noelle straightened up and smiled at me like nothing had happened. I looked at her and said I heard everything. Her face dropped. Noelle didn't panic the way most people would. She adjusted. That was the thing about Noelle. She never froze when she was caught. She pivoted. She looked at me and her expression shifted from shock to something softer, something rehearsed. Her eyes filled with tears on command, and she said, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. I just got confused after my breakup, and Wendell has been so kind to me, and I mistook that kindness for something more. I'm embarrassed. Please forgive me. It was a perfect performance. If I hadn't spent my entire life watching her do this, I might have believed it. Wendell stood near the doorway with his arms crossed. He didn't say a word. He just watched. I told Noelle to leave. She tried to hug me, and I stepped back. She tried again, and I said, don't touch me. Her face flickered for just a second, and I saw it. The real Noelle. The one who wasn't sorry at all. The one who was angry she got caught. She grabbed her purse and walked out without closing the door behind her. Wendell shut it and locked it and turned to me and said, I'm sorry I didn't shut it down sooner. I should have told her directly to stop instead of just being polite. I told him I wasn't angry at him. I had watched him handle every moment of this with respect and transparency. He never entertained her. He never led her on. He showed me every message. He told me about every interaction. He did everything right, and I made sure he knew that. What I didn't expect was what came next. 2 days later, my mother called. She was crying. She said Noelle had come to her and told her that Wendell had been making advances toward her for months, that Wendell had been texting her late at night, that Wendell had been flirting with her when I wasn't in the room, and that when Noelle finally confronted him about it, I had walked in and misunderstood the situation and blamed Noelle for everything. My mother said she believed Noelle. She said Wendell always seemed a little too quiet, and that quiet men were the ones you had to watch out for. She said I was blinded by love and that I needed to listen to my sister because family doesn't lie about things like this. I sat on the edge of my bed holding the phone and I felt something crack inside me. Not because of what Noelle did. I expected that, but because my mother believed her without even asking me what happened. I told my mother she was wrong. I told her I had heard the entire conversation. I told her Wendell had shown me every text message Noelle ever sent him. My mother went quiet and then said, well, maybe you heard it out of context. That's when I knew. It didn't matter what I said. It didn't matter what evidence I had. Noelle had gotten to her first, and that was enough. I hung up. My father called an hour later. He was calmer, but he said the same thing in a softer voice. He said he didn't want to take sides, but that Noelle was very upset, and maybe Wendell owed her an apology to keep the peace. I said, an apology for what? He said, for leading her on. I said he didn't lead her on. He said, well, she feels like he did. I said, I don't care what she feels. I care about what actually happened. He sighed and said, you're being difficult. And I said, no, I'm being honest. There's a difference. Over the next week, Noelle called me 11 times. I didn't answer. She texted me long paragraphs about how she was sorry, and how she was going through a hard time, and how I was the only family she had, and how she couldn't believe I was throwing away our relationship over a misunderstanding. Every text was carefully worded to make herself the victim. She never once admitted what she actually said to Wendell. She never once acknowledged that she had told our parents a completely different version of events. Then she changed tactics. She posted on social media a long emotional caption about how she was going through the hardest time of her life, and how the people she loved most had turned their backs on her when she needed them. She didn't name me, but everyone knew who she was talking about. She posted a photo of us as kids, the two of us at a birthday party with matching dresses and cake on our faces. The caption said, I miss when things were simple. The comments flooded in, over 200 of them. People telling her she was strong, people telling her she deserved better, people saying whoever hurt you doesn't deserve you. Her friend Jocelyn commented, family should never abandon you during your lowest moment, and Noelle liked it and replied with a broken heart emoji. My cousin Rena messaged me directly and said, I saw Noelle's post, and I think you should reach out to her because she's really hurting. I didn't respond. My Aunt Claudia sent a group message to our extended family chat saying she hoped we could all come together and support Noelle during this difficult time. Nobody asked what the difficult time actually was. Nobody asked for my side. They just rallied around her because Noelle had always known how to position herself at the center of everyone's sympathy. 2 weeks after the dinner, Noelle escalated again. She showed up at our house unannounced. Wendell was home alone because I was at work. She knocked on the door, and when he opened it, she was crying and asking to talk. Wendell told her she needed to leave. She said, please, just 5 minutes. He said no. She said, I just need someone to listen to me. He said, call a therapist. She stood on the porch and said, you know you felt something too. Don't pretend you didn't. Wendell said I felt uncomfortable. That's what I felt. He closed the door. She stood outside for 10 minutes before leaving. When I got home, Wendell told me everything. He showed me the doorbell camera footage. He looked exhausted, and I could tell this was wearing on him. He sat on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands and said, I don't want to cause problems between you and your family. Maybe I should just apologize to keep things calm. I sat down next to him and put my hand on his back. I told him absolutely not. You did nothing wrong, and apologizing would be admitting to something that didn't happen. He looked at me and his eyes were red. He said, I've never had someone try so hard to break something I care about. It's not even about me. She doesn't want me. She wants to hurt you. I know, I said. That's what makes it worse. He nodded, but I could see it in his face. The guilt of being the reason my family was falling apart, even though none of it was his fault. He went quiet for a while and then said, whatever you decide to do about your family, I'm with you. I don't need them to like me. I just need you to know I'd never betray you. I already knew that, but hearing him say it in that moment when everything around us felt uncertain meant more than I can explain. I decided it was time to end this. I gathered every text message Noelle had sent Wendell. I took screenshots of all of them. The ones that said thinking about you today, and I wish I could find someone like you, and you make me feel safe in a way no one else does. I pulled the doorbell camera footage of her showing up alone and begging Wendell to let her in. I saved the voicemails she left him that she didn't know I knew about. The ones where she whispered that she couldn't stop thinking about him, and that she knew he was too good for me, and that one day he'd realize it. I organized all of it into a folder on my phone. Then I called my parents and told them I wanted to come to Sunday dinner. I said I wanted to talk things out and that I wanted Noelle to be there. My mother was thrilled. She said she knew I'd come around. She said this is what family does. We forgive and we move on. I said of course we do. Sunday came. Wendell and I drove to my parents' house together. Noelle was already there sitting at the dining room table looking composed and confident. She had clearly prepared her version of events. She probably rehearsed it in front of a mirror. When we walked in, Noelle stood up and opened her arms for a hug. I walked past her and sat down. Wendell sat next to me. My parents were at the ends of the table. My father looked relieved that everyone was in the same room. My mother looked at me expectantly. She said, I'm glad you're here. Let's just talk and move forward as a family. I said, before we move forward, I want to make sure everyone has the full picture. Noelle's smile tightened. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. I opened the text messages first. I read them out loud. Every single one. Thinking about you today. You're the kind of man I wish I could find. I made this for you specifically. You make me feel things I shouldn't. My mother's face shifted. My father put down his fork. Noelle said those are taken out of context. I said, okay, let me give you more context. I played the doorbell camera footage of Noelle showing up at my house crying and begging Wendell to let her in. The audio was clear. You know you felt something too. Don't pretend you didn't. Noelle's face went pale. I played the voicemails next. Her voice, soft and breathy, telling my husband that she couldn't stop thinking about him, that she knew he was too good for me, that one day he'd realize it. The room was silent. My mother stared at the phone like it had bitten her. My father looked at Noelle and then at the table and didn't say a word. Noelle opened her mouth and closed it, then opened it again. She said I was in a dark place. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just needed someone to care about me. I said you didn't need someone to care about you. You needed to take what was mine, just like you've always done, just like Corey, just like my friends, just like everything I've ever had that you decided you wanted. You didn't want Wendell. You wanted to prove you could have him, and you failed. Noelle started crying. Real tears this time, not the performed kind. The kind that come when you've been completely exposed and there is no angle left to play. My mother looked at me and her voice was small. She said I didn't know. I said you didn't ask. You believed Noelle because you've always believed Noelle. You didn't call Wendell. You didn't call me to hear my side. You just accepted her version because that's what you've always done. My father said we should have listened to you. I'm sorry. I nodded, but I didn't say it was okay because it wasn't. Wendell had been quiet through all of this, but then he stood up. He looked at my parents and said, I love your daughter. I have loved her since the day she walked up to me in that bookstore and asked about my book. I would never disrespect her. I would never disrespect your family. Everything I did was to protect what we have, and I showed her every single message and every interaction because I have nothing to hide. He turned to Noelle, and I'm telling you directly now so there is no confusion. I don't have feelings for you. I never did. I never will. What you did was manipulative and dishonest, and it nearly cost your sister her family. I hope you think about that. Noelle stared at him. She had no response, no pivot, no performance, just silence. Wendell looked at me and said, "Whenever you're ready, we can go." I stood up. My mother reached for my arm and said, "Please don't leave like this. We can work through this." I looked at her and said, "You can work through it with Noelle. I've been working through it my whole life." We left. In the car, Wendell reached over and held my hand. He said, "Are you okay?" I said, "I don't know, but I know I'm done pretending." That night, I blocked Noelle's number. I blocked her on every platform. I didn't make a post about it. I didn't tell anyone what happened. I just removed her from my life like pulling a splinter that had been buried under my skin for 30 years. My parents called multiple times over the following days. I answered once. My mother said Noelle was devastated and had been crying for 2 days straight and wasn't eating. She said Noelle admitted she was wrong and wanted to apologize properly. She said family is family and we needed to heal. I told my mother I would consider it, but only if Noelle got professional help, real therapy, not a 2-session trial she could quit when it got uncomfortable. My mother agreed. 2 months went by. Noelle started therapy according to my mother. She was seeing someone twice a week. She had written me a letter that my mother offered to deliver, but I told her I wasn't ready. I needed time. During those 2 months, something happened that I didn't expect. My father called me one evening, not about Noelle. He said he had been thinking about what I said at dinner, about how they had always believed Noelle first. He said he went back through his memories and realized I was right. He said when we were kids and Noelle told them she got better grades, they never checked. When Noelle said my friends liked her more, they never questioned it. When Noelle said Wendell was the one pursuing her, they accepted it without evidence. He said, "I'm not calling to make excuses. I'm calling because I failed you, and I want you to know I see it now." He paused and his voice broke slightly. He said, "Your mother and I always thought we were being fair. We thought treating you both the same meant we were good parents, but we weren't treating you the same. We were giving Noelle the benefit of the doubt every time and asking you to be the bigger person every time, and those are not the same thing." That phone call meant more to me than any apology from Noelle ever could, because it wasn't just words. It was my father finally seeing the pattern that had shaped my entire childhood and calling it what it was. 6 months after the dinner, I agreed to meet Noelle, not at my parents' house, at a coffee shop on neutral ground. She showed up looking different, not in the way she dressed, but in the way she carried herself. She was quieter. She made eye contact, but didn't hold it too long. She sat across from me and didn't try to hug me. She said, "I'm not going to make excuses. What I did was wrong. I've been doing it my entire life, and I didn't understand why until I started therapy." She said her therapist helped her see that she had built her entire identity around comparison, that she didn't know who she was outside of measuring herself against me, that every time she took something from me, it wasn't about the thing or the person. It was about filling a hole inside her that never got filled no matter how many times she won. She said it started when we were little. She said our parents praised me for being independent and responsible, and she internalized that as meaning she was the opposite. So instead of building herself up, she tore me down because that was easier. Because if she could take what I had, then she didn't have to figure out what she wanted for herself. She said, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know that I'm working on it and I'm sorry. Not the sorry I said when I got caught. A real sorry. The kind that comes with understanding what you actually did and why you did it." I looked at her for a long time. I said, "I appreciate that, but I don't trust you, and I don't know if I ever will." She nodded. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just said, "I understand." We finished our coffee and left separately. A year later, Noelle and I have a limited relationship. We see each other at family events. We're polite. We can have a short conversation without it feeling dangerous, but she doesn't come to my house anymore. She doesn't text Wendell. She doesn't have his number. That boundary is permanent. My mother has accepted it, even though I know she wishes things were different. My father checks in on me every week now, not to talk about Noelle, just to talk. He asks about my work. He asks about Wendell. He asks what book I'm reading. It's the relationship I always wanted with him, and it took all of this to get there. Wendell and I are stronger than we've ever been. What Noelle did didn't break us. It tested us and we passed. He still shows me his phone whenever someone messages him, not because I ask, because that's who he is. Last month we went back to the bookstore where we met. He found the same book he was reading that day, and he bought it. He signed the inside cover and gave it to me. The inscription said to the woman who asked me about my book and then stayed for the whole story, "I'm still reading. I'm still here." I held the book against my chest and thought about Noelle and how she spent months trying to take the one thing I had that she couldn't. And I thought about Wendell standing in my parents' dining room choosing me in front of everyone, not dramatically, not loudly, just simply and clearly and without hesitation. That was enough. That was everything.